Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the new Agito Uprising battle, Ciella's Wrath. In these new battles on Standard and Expert difficulty, you're going to be facing off against a water element boss, Ciella. So this is your chance to bring all your sweet wind characters. I have been hyped for this since Eleonora is my first summon in Dragalia Lost and one of my favorite characters, so this is my opportunity to put her to the test. I'm going to be sharing my first clear today on Standard difficulty as well as Expert difficulty. Both of these were done in solo play. That is a way that I've been enjoying the game a lot recently, is doing solo play, and I actually find it to be easier at times not having to coordinate with other players, and I feel like this fight is designed in such a way that a lot of the harder mechanics are a lot easier when you don't have to worry about three other people potentially, stepping or tripping over you. So for our Standard difficulty clear, this is where I wanted to use Eleonora. It's my first clear of this new content. Also threw in Wedding Aoi since she's a favorite of mine. Neither of these characters are necessarily some of the best wind DPS, but both of them have tier 2 high dragon weapons here, so I figure it'll probably be enough to just go ahead and auto this, have my Grace and Patia set up. A mainstay, a staple for a lot of auto content. They do synergize really well together, being so defensive and getting extra regen ticks on Grace. And the reason I decided to go with auto battle for my first clear was I don't really know the mechanics yet, but the AI usually does a pretty good job of dodging things, probably better than I would as somebody who doesn't know the mechanics. Not to mention with Grace's shield, you can see there that we can kind of just tank crazy strong moves like that. However, our shields were down for that screen-wide attack, and this is something kind of unique to Ciella. She does have a screen-wide move, which we really didn't see in the other Agito fights except for when they transform. So I do think that's kind of neat. It applies vulnerability, and that's one of her two mechanics, with the other one being Veil, or Mist Veil. When she activates Veil, you can't hit her, and she becomes invisible. You kind of have to follow her around to get to a safe spot, so you don't die to that purple attack. And she also cures herself of afflictions, as well as debuffs, I believe. But Standard difficulty wasn't too bad. Got a little worried for Wedding Aoi there for a second, but ultimately ended up being fine. Ended up switching my comp later on to make this more consistent, and decided to throw in Valentine's Melody and Hawk instead as my two lead units. It seemed to work out pretty well. I was able to grind up my tree using this method after I had cleared Expert, so I don't think you need to do the tree or have 6-star weapons or anything to do Expert, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have it. So here is my Expert clear. To get into the vulnerability mechanic a little bit, that one is a debuff that stacks on you and decreases your defense by, I believe, 15% for a long time. I want to say 90 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. I could be off on that. And I think it stacks up to 3 times. For Expert, I am soloing, but I wasn't able to get this down through auto just yet. There's some mechanics in the second half of the fight that get pretty hard to deal with. And I had attempted this quite a few times, so I kind of know the patterns by now. This was a few hours after resets happened, so it did take a couple hours to kind of get this down and to pick a team comp to use. I ultimately decided to go ahead and stick with Patia and Grace. I felt like I needed Patia for Grace to have good amount of sustain and regen, while I needed Grace because in the second half of the fight, Ciella has some really strong defensive buffs that she repeatedly applies to herself, and it becomes very slow to take her out without access to a Dispel, and Grace has one of the most spammable Dispels in the game, so I figured she was a good addition to bring along. Plus, she just provides really awesome shields, so I figured she would be excellent for this. Then Hawk is right now my best wind DPS. It's the only wind tier 2 high dragon weapon that I have max unbound, so I figured I'll bring him. It turns out in Expert you can't actually stun Ciella, but in Standard you can. Seems like a pretty fair balance. Here, for the Veil, honestly I don't really know how to dodge it that well, but the AI is super good, so I just turned on auto for that portion. And ultimately, we're pretty much just going through the motions here, and I'm saving skills for the more dangerous attacks that Ciella does. For example, she has this rebounding arrows. Usually that's fine for the AI. They're really good at dodging it. But this particular attack where she sends out one powerful charge shot, sometimes that can land on Grace and just one-shot her or hurt her really badly. Luckily, the skills I have are just long enough that bolts from above, I can kind of just iframe it. The reason I say this is probably a lot harder in co-op is I think when you're in co-op, all 4 of the players have that happening, and so they have to be more careful about dodging. And there's other mechanics like a water arrow that gets summoned and planted in the ground that will explode into ice projectiles that also, I think, in co-op there's 4 of those instead of just 1. So what I love about this fight is it's challenging. You know, when you get hit by attacks, you add vulnerability stack, so it does reward skilled play by avoiding attacks as much as possible. Yes, there are unavoidable segments of damage, like right there, and I think that's fine. That provides a role for healers to play, although this can be done with no healers just fine. But it does provide a role where if you want a more comfortable run, you can use healers, you can use defensive characters. I think that that's one thing I really like about this. It kind of reminds me of Kaiyan in the early days when, you know, there's double Patia comps, some people prefer to run that way. There's also like Lathna comps where people prefer to run 4 DPS. And really, this Floor of Despair is the only segment of the fight where I'm genuinely worried about keeping my AI alive. I tried my best, but we still got Hawk hit there. That part is kind of hard to deal with, and there are ways to cheese it by using Lowen and getting like lots of HP buffs and using Freya, and so that even if your AI aren't out of the way, you can still survive. But that is kind of one of the harder or more RNG-centric aspects of soloing this fight, in my opinion. So I had gotten to that point many times, just wiped out there, and I had never really gotten past it without losing at least 1 unit. So at this point, I don't know what's happening very well. I decided I probably want to be fairly conservative with my skills use so that I can iframe things successfully. And we also want to get to a good point where we have shields up again for Grace, since we did take quite a few unavoidable AoEs there and they applied Fragile. So now, luckily, we were able to break. We had our nice defensive defense down AoE up. I actually think that defense down is pretty solid. There's that water arrow I was talking about, but we can pretty much just one-shot it. But I think that these debuff zones are actually fairly solid. Ciella does stand still pretty often. She moves around a good amount, so they're not completely busted, but there are times when she's just going to stand in one place. Like, this is a good example, but obviously there we needed to focus on dodging. Hadn't seen that before, because that doesn't happen in the first phase of the fight. Well, it happens, but not with the 2 lasers, the 2 ice lasers. So I have to say that was a really sweet attack, and I like that in phase 2, while she is similar to phase 1, she's not similar to Kaiyan or Volk necessarily. She has this dash, I mean, she has some similar attacks, and there I definitely messed up becoming Vayu. I don't even know what I was thinking there. I kind of just panicked and became Vayu. I guess earlier I had run the same comp but with the Shining Overlord, so I wanted to find some outlet for my dragons. But yeah, that was pretty bad, and ultimately Grace ended up eating a hit or activating another life shield from that exchange. There I became Vayu in hopes that maybe I could stop that blast, but again, being Vayu is not really helping me here. Luckily we can time out the clock during Mist Veil, and this actually got kind of dangerous, but the AI does tend to stand out of the way of the purples, so that was also fine to auto. Probably something I should learn to do myself manually eventually. And here we go. Unfortunately, there was another one of these things. So because my DPS wasn't that high, I wasn't able to clear yet at this point, and we lost Grace, sadly. I was able to pull away and save 3 of my characters though, so it felt like there was a shot here. I'm holding a lot of skills because I don't know what's coming up, and I just want to have like multiple iframes available as necessary. We use one there, and I decide that they'll stay stationary. Ciella will stay stationary. So I decided to go ahead and start unleashing some skills. However, her next dash came quickly, and it looked like it was going to kill some of my units. It didn't, thankfully, and so I was able to continue attacking. and I didn't want to overextend here. I was kind of worried about casting skills, but I decided to go for it. I figured we're so close that if we just keep spamming attacks, we finally get the clear. So that was my first clear in Ciella's Wrath. Pretty fun trial. I have to say, I like the motion mechanics. I think that the way that Bog and Freeze play out are pretty cool. I love that there's a variety of ways to approach it, from solo to co-op to healers to no healers. There's Hawk strats, there's other strats. So I think that this has been a really fun new addition to the game. I'm looking forward to playing it. I need more resources to continue playing it because I don't have that many more honeys or stamina to actually spend doing this in my preferred method of solo play. But this was obviously a lot slower clear. I'll probably try out co-op soon, see what that's like. I imagine it's kind of hectic, but I think it'll still probably be fun. I'll go ahead and show off my team. It was pretty cool to get to use Wedding Alisane, since Alisane is kind of the canonical foil to Ciella. So I did enjoy using that, and one reason I picked her for this was it was between her and Vice, and I think Vice I tried several times and he was working okay as well. But one reason I picked her for this is the amount of defensive buffs on this team. She has strength double buff built in, and I gave her Brothers in Arms to give her a second source of 13% strength double buff. Since she has regen in her first skill, she doesn't really need to run the Odd Sparrows like my other characters do. So, pretty sweet. Checking out Ciella's Wrath. I hope you enjoyed this video and have had fun with the trial yourself. Let's go ahead and put on our epithet to celebrate our victory. Let me know what you thought of Ciella's Wrath in the comments below. Thank you as always for watching though. That's going to do it for this video, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you next time.